Okay, so for week 3 of my monthly deck challenge, I have been working with the Wisdom of the Golden Path deck by Tony Carmine Salerno, and it's illustrated by, I'm going to say his name wrong, Yu Tang. You spell it Yuehui, and then his last name is spelled Tang. This artist has such beautiful artwork, even and it is some of it is digital. You can see um, the interplay of mediums that he uses, but his artwork is so compelling and just absolutely gorgeous. And so I was excited to work with this deck again. Interestingly enough, at the boutique where I work at, in partnership with some of the other ladies that work there, we put out a deck seasonally for people to be able to come in and do a daily draw with if they'd like. And this was the deck that we put out, I think maybe like a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago. No, I think the beginning of March. This is the deck that we put out to kind of usher in spring, and it just the colors, you can see on the backing, they just kind of pull you in, and the guidebook, which we have displayed on the table, is just so gorgeous. And so I was doing daily draws with this at work, and for myself and the ladies and people that would come in and ask. Some people do ask for help, some people prefer to do their own daily draw. And the messages were just so articulate and beautiful that I wanted to make sure when I did my monthly deck challenge that this was one of the decks that I worked with, because I spent a lot of time with this deck last spring. In fact, I read the guidebook when Vincent was first born. When he would nap, I would read the guidebook. So I spent a lot of time with this deck last spring, and then Oracle of the Mermaids showed up, and I was just so swept away by that deck. It showed up in April, and I love this deck, but I didn't really work with it a whole lot after that last year, except for looking at the artwork and doing some daily draws with it and things like that. So I've been really blessed this week to be able to work with this deck again and to get to know it really well, and not just using it for other people, because interestingly enough, this deck likes to come to readings a lot, but I haven't worked with it personally as much as I would have liked to, because I am such a collector. I get swept away and have lustful experiences with different decks, and then I buy a new one and I have one with that. So sometimes I get a little sidetracked. And that's why my goal this year is to take a step back and make sure that I really want to explore what I'm purchasing, and also that the decks that I do have are getting due attention. But I digress. I'm a little off track today. I injured my knee earlier this week, and I just still feeling a little bit off. Anyhow, so I started the week with this deck, and I've been using it again for daily draws for myself, daily draws for the Facebook page, and in any kind of personal spreads that I've needed to do. And I've had some issues come up with some family members this week, and I found this deck to be the perfect deck to be working with for it. Interestingly enough, even though this deck is so golden and delicious that way, the colors are so beautiful. Here, I'll show some images while I talk so you can at least look at that if I'm just rambling. I feel like this deck really holds the element of water in a very, very beautiful way, and that's how I feel I connect with it at a very emotional level. Now, I still have 1 day left of working with this deck, so I'm on Friday, and Saturday will be my last day working with this deck. So who knows what delightful things could happen in between this afternoon and tomorrow night. But I find that this deck is it really brings up the emotions, and it really is very loving in the way that it helps us to see where there's imbalance and what we want to grow in our emotions. There's the word balance. So I just have to say that I love this image. I think this is my favorite card in the deck, isn't it? Just gorgeous. So it's really been a week where I've been emotional, and so that colors your experience with the deck, but the experience of working with this deck has been one of encouraging me to release and express emotion instead of stuffing it down, which honestly I have a tendency to do. I mean, we all, we all have our coping mechanisms that we took on as children in order to survive in a lot of ways. And so those tend to come up for us when we experience difficulty. And so for me, this deck has really been about, okay, we're not going to hide from anything this week. Like when we feel things, let's look at them. Let's take a look at the feelings. Let's cry if we need to. Let's get angry if we need to. And it hasn't been so much about like go into an action space as much as say my first week with Wild Wisdom of the Fairy deck was. This has been much more about just being and sitting and seeing how you really feel. In fact, if I were to compare the deck itself to a tarot card, it would be the Hanged Man, I think, which it holds the element of water within it. So this is really about like sitting in the emotion, but not getting drowned in it, being aware of the emotions that are actually there, and being kind to yourself about what this experience is teaching you. And we've had a lot of cards show up like on the Facebook page, but also for myself, about working with others and about how are you able to be your true authentic self? Who are you really? What is it that you want to share with others and show to others? And how have you perhaps stopped doing that? In what ways are you just people pleasing and not, see, don't compromise. This deck is incredible. And not speaking your truth in certain situations. So this one you can't really see with my computer, but oh, there's a Vincent something on there. Vincent. Interesting. There are tiny, tiny, tiny little ladybugs in her hair. See? So beautiful. And there are butterflies down here. So it's spring, isn't that gorgeous? The messages have been very powerful. Here's the card for emotions. So let's talk about the guidebook a little bit, because when I do a deck challenge, I like to kind of refresh my memory with the guidebook. So I enjoy this guidebook a lot, and he has affirmations at the bottom of the card meaning. The card meanings themselves are, there's about a good paragraph or two that you get, and I find that to be very helpful. It's a good jumping off point, but I really like to use my intuition with this deck and kind of not get overly into what the guidebook is saying. And I think that's because this is more of like this is the energy that's around you type of a guidebook. And so it doesn't always give like the most concrete focus. And I think when you work with this deck intuitively, you're able to bring that focus in. So I find that that's the most positive way for me to work with this deck, is not so involved in the guidebook, even though I enjoy the guidebook. And the colors are just absolutely brilliant. I hope that they do another deck together. See, I have to turn and look because it's just so gorgeous. I just want to look at it. So there's a lot to get out of this deck and a lot to appreciate with this deck. And like I said, this is a deck that pulls the element of water for me. If I was going to cast my circle with this deck, which I'm going to do a video on this, I think, but when I cast a circle, I do like to use certain decks in each of the positions for the elements, for the directions, for the corners, however you choose to look at those. And I like to pull from different decks for that. I don't always use the same deck, and so this would definitely be my water element, which for me, using the medicine wheel as my guide, would be in the west, would be with the black bear woman. So I have nothing but love and appreciation for this deck this week. I have been spending a lot of time with it, and I have had a lot of emotional release and a lot of understanding of myself and what I am maybe selling myself short on, and what I need to bring in to make myself feel proud of myself, I guess. So it's really been an emotional journey with this deck this week, and this deck is so loving that it really holds beautiful space for that. So if you don't have this deck and you're considering working with it, I think it's wonderful for just giving you love, emotion, and again, helping those things to come to the surface for you to release them when you're going through a very difficult time. This is a wonderful deck to work with that with. So this has been my deck for week 3 of my challenge. And I absolutely love this deck. I highly recommend it. I've had beautiful experiences with it. And again, this deck is just water energy to me. It's very water energy. So I'm not sure what deck I'm going to use next week. I've been thinking about this a little bit. Because I've already used 2 Lucy Cavendish Oracle decks, and I have a lot of Lucy Cavendish decks, and I love all of them. But I think I'm going to use something different. So we'll see what I end up going with on Sunday, like what feels right. But I have the Gaia Oracle, which I really love. I haven't used my Enchanted Map Oracle in a long time, so I was wondering maybe it's time to work with that one. I'm gonna see how I feel on Sunday, but we'll see what deck is on the Facebook draw for Monday morning, and then you'll know. So let me know what you guys are doing for this week of your deck challenge. Much love to you all. Many blessings, and I'll see you in the next video.